Another Inmendham video production. Alright, a response video to some guy, voskhod or something, or something. I like this image very much. Yeah, sometimes simple art is the best art. Get to the point. Yeah, like that. Anyway, so the subject is sort of a remixing of the argument of this idea of a logical imperative versus a imperative of biology, a compulsion. Whether there is even the idea of altruism as a real concept, something purely of the knowledge rather than of the mechanism. And I have argued, I've conceded that some people give me more credit than I'm due, in the sense of being, obviously some people think I'm just Hitler, an uncaring brute, and other people think of me as being a sensitive, caring, generous person in some sort of genuine way. And I've had to sort of argue that the truth is more complex. Much of my concern, even describing the lifeboat scenario, and the difficulty of compromising and deciding whose fate is more important and doing all this stuff, the underlying thought for me does become kind of selfish, in the sense of my imagination imagines myself in the circumstance, and I end up protecting myself from harm. So if I, even doing so, even with animals, I've had to kill some animals, put them out of their misery. And this is this kind of a weird emotional thing, where your emotions are saying one thing: hug, pet, care for, comfort, and your intelligence says another thing, which is make it quick, get it over with. An uncomfortable, brief action is the wise action. Pick up the rock, bash its brains out of its skull. Totally unintuitive emotionally, totally sickening personally, but the understanding is that there's benefit. So this is often a theme in some philosophical conversation, that we endure pain in the short term for a long-term gain. These are cliche kind of concepts. No pain, no gain. Clearly we're not run by emotion alone. We're run by knowledge of the fact that life happens over a period of time, and that you can exchange currency, cheap currency today, for good currency tomorrow, that kind of thing. You can buy the market, exploit the future, and make small investments now for very good long-term investments. So there's real issues in the world, like malaria. And the substance of the world's dollars are going to treatments, in the sense of either treatments for the people who are sick, or treatments for the parasite, the mosquitoes. So defenses against mosquitoes. And a smaller percentage of the dollars are going to eradication of the disease. So the cure isn't getting as much money as the band-aids. So this treating the symptoms is getting more dollars than preventing the symptoms from existing in the future. Now, I think a rational argument could be made that although the immediate concern, the emotional tug, is strong, the victims need help now. They're real and alive now. And our emotions say they're the more important victim than the pretend ones that we can imagine existing in the future, even though the number in the future is so much greater, potentially, 1,000 times, million times that kind of number. And so I think a rational argument can be made for the draconian, evil, harsh, brutal obedience to a logical principle that says, fuck your emotional discomfort, do what's smart, do what is efficient. And so this gets into the whole concept of how an AI would deal with the questions, an artificial intelligence, of value. And if it was given the seeds of knowledge of value, would it still act as an emotional human? But I guess I would argue that humans are more complex than just having knowledge of pain and comfort. We don't really chase pleasure. We chase because of an idea, a reinforced addiction, I would argue. Much of our chasing is more to do with getting out of a tedium or a monotony or a dissatisfaction than it is chasing a satisfaction. It's more whip than carrot, often. And often the strength of the compulsion is because of this reinforced idea that it's going to be good. It's like the whole exaggerating, like you're going to Disneyland, like this will be something. And it's more something in your head than it is as a real event when it actually takes place. The real event won't be as magnificent as your perception of the event, the one your body constructs. And I think that's like with most things we become compulsive about. We think the goal will be a utopia. We have an impression of it. We have a sense of a completeness waiting for us. And when we get there, we'll find that there's something else making us incomplete. I guess it's the syndrome. So that's a more complex element of psychology. And you just can't answer a question, why do we care, with some sort of simple explanation like, well, because we have a biological instinct. It's more complicated than that. And clearly in the context of sophisticated philosophy, it really gets complicated because you can intellectually recognize your own internal biases. I did that with rodents. I mean, I always saw them as dirty and scurvy and yuck. That was my impression. And my brain deliberately told me, you're a bigot, you're an asshole, it's a silly way to judge something. Stop doing that. Recognize it for its brain and think about it, assess it based on its intelligence. And you realize they're incredibly low intelligent organisms. Very active, very curious, very, very intensely conscious. And I realized I'd fall into a bad habit of our culture rather than a good thought process. So again, our thought process can understand the weaknesses of our psychology, the built-in will of our psychology to make everything black and white, good and evil, and to do it in a way that's convenient to our own purposes, that makes our strengths seem more valuable than our weaknesses. We start to think that, I mean, you can do it just with appearance. People with big noses can think your eyes are important, right? And, your sense of humor, people with, so, what I mean? We'll rationalize a perception of the world to match us and to make ourselves feel more like we're the round peg going in the round hole. These are elements of psychology that don't really enlighten our capacity to be fair and decent in the world. They're more of an obstacle than an asset. Our superficial, innate impulses. So, to say that without the nature of our capacity to recognize pain and pleasure, that capacity doesn't negate an obligation to do that fairly, not just intuitively or instinctively. Because if you do it intuitively or instinctively, you're not going to be likely to be the friend of the victim. You're likely to keep the slaves with band-aids, okay, instead of freeing the slaves, so to speak. You're not necessarily going to do what's in the best interest of the game you're playing and the best result of the game play, because you'll make the game conform to the fact that you're a very good kicker. You're not so much a good runner, you're a good kicker. So you'll try to play the game where somehow kicking is more important than running. Where the best game might be, give the ball to the runner, because the game is really made for runners. That kind of thing. So I'll play a little bit, so now you'll sort of see where my point is going here. I haven't played the whole video yet, so we'll just play with it and see where it goes.
How those very same Darwinian selection forces, that very same DNA molecule, is equally responsible for the fact that we actually care at all.
Yeah, but see, it does that in this negative way, right? I mean, I think the very fact that we feel, like I said, once you have knowledge of this thing called feeling good and feeling bad, the step of recognizing that that sensation is the only thing that has value, and it doesn't matter what organism I put it in. So I can put it in somebody I hate, and those sensations are still bad and good. And it really doesn't matter that the machine they're in is a shithead, a fucktard, an asshole. It still would be better if you were to have two worlds. Happy Nazis killing Jews or unhappy Nazis killing Jews. It's still better. If the Jews are going to get killed, it might as well be by happy Nazis. As bad as that sounds, it's just a truth. And that's something your brain knows, not something your intuition knows, not something your DNA molecule is telling you. So I'm saying most of what the molecule is telling you has a bigoted tone to it. My kind, my family, my. And it doesn't have much to do with the actual core understanding of the fact that because I feel, I now know what's at stake. And now I know what's valuable in the game I'm playing. And I know that it really just matters how much good and bad is happening. It doesn't matter who's doing it. And that knowledge by itself is incredibly powerful, as long as you value the truth, and as long as you value playing a good game. And I would argue that those are conceptual pieces of knowledge that are inescapable. I think once you know the negative is negative, like it means something to be negative, torture is bad, okay, once you know that, the rest of the story is just inescapable if you're telling it honestly. I'm honestly telling the story that I know those sensations. I wouldn't want to be the victim of them in another circumstance. I don't want to be born in Indonesia, because I know if I am, I'm going to feel a lot of that bad stuff, and it's unlikely that I'm going to be any kind of great machine that's going to do anything great with its existence, because I'm likely going to be distracted by playing some stupid, emotional, ignorant human game. I'll be a monkey. I don't want to be a monkey. I want to be more than that. I aspire for consciousness to be more than that, because I know it just happens. I didn't select me as the vessel I'm riding. The vessel was selected for me by fate, by deterministic circumstances, not under my control. And that piece of knowledge known means that I can understand that therefore the grace of God go I. I can do this cliche thing and realize that something happening to anybody is something happening to somebody, and that somebody is basically all I am. I'm just a somebody, and they're all somebodies. And there's no logical distinction between this body and that body.
About the suffering of other sentient beings, the fact that we even have the capacity to care about the suffering of other beings other than ourselves.
See, that's what I'm trying to say. Is though the care part, I'm saying is that I think I'm talking a great deal of empathy, but what I'm saying is it's not empathy driven by personal emotional passion. It's not because I love people. It's because I respect. It's because I recognize. It's because I acknowledge. Just as my entire perception of the rodent's life and it's the tragedy of the rodent's life, let's call it, if I was to write a book, is made out of recognizing truth, not feeling the truth.
That is an engineered trait in us. It's a product of our evolution.
Well, again, I'm arguing that, yes, some of our instinctive behavior is a product of evolution. Some of our fears and some of our tendencies towards attachments to allies, the whole gang mentality, a group of gladiators versus a single gladiator. But there's also a rogue mechanism. There's lots of psychology that's built into our psychological evolution, and it isn't as simple as saying people are caring. They're really not. It depends on the role they're playing. If they're an alpha, they're less caring, I think. Than the cowering betas who need a gang. The alpha doesn't need a gang. The betas need a gang. That kind of thing.
A social species. We don't have empathy because we're conscious. Even animals.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is I'm saying my empathy is mostly the empathy that I have any use for, or that I have any respect for. I mean, clearly I like girls who are attractive and, have certain aesthetic elements. That's not a good thing. I mean, I can wallow in appreciation of beauty, but let's be clear, I don't think that's a good thing. I think it'd be better if I could feel that way without something having to be superficially attractive.
A degree of empathy we've seen in dolphins and chimpanzees. They're not conscious. They don't recognize that there's a consciousness.
Well, I don't know what that means. They're not conscious. They don't recognize that there's a consciousness. They're conscious. Now, the fact that they don't necessarily understand that what they're doing is an expression of their own, in a sense, their empathy might be made out of a sense of their group, and the fact that they've extended their existence into these attachments, and these attachments are strong. And so, yeah, anything that's happening to the field is happening to them. Their flesh is now a little bit further into the environment, and they'll feel the threat. And but that's almost as natural and as sensible in a sense as a baby looking up at its mother as being the provider, the source of comfort, the source of food and everything it needs. So in a sense, the underlying mechanism might be that crass, in a sense that it's like watching you have one source of water, and you're watching your puddle dry up that you always drink from, and without that water you die. You'll suffer. That much anyway as an animal. You can see the threat. That kind of thing. That's it's a threat to your vending machine. It could be that crass.
In other animals, but they have a degree of empathy anyways. You seem to be under...
Yeah, empathy and fear. I don't know what word separates from what word, and this whole... I've never really liked the word empathy, just because of it's another word that just is used to a whole class of emotions are thrown into that bucket, and I'm just not sure that I like that. I like it in the sense of the pure sense of just saying I can imagine myself in that position, and I can feel, in a sense, the threat. I might not be able to feel the pain exactly, but I can feel the threat that If it happens to them, it can happen to me. And that's part of what I describe as the mechanism of my empathy. It's a little bit selfish. Maybe a lot selfish.
The impression that the desire to care about another sentient being is simply the product of just pure logic.
Well, I'm saying it can be. I'm not saying it is for people, but I'm saying intellectually understanding our psychology is the first principle almost of philosophy. I mean, the first thing as soon as you are aware that you have a psychology, the idea is to understand it, because clearly it's fucking with your mechanism. It's compelling you to do things, and analyzing those compulsions is a first logical step in a sense of you want to try to find out how to play the game right. So I'm an intelligence. I say I'm here. I understand there's good and bad because I feel it. I understand good and bad exist in the world, and I want to maximize good and minimize bad because I want to do that for myself. And so it's a logical assumption to assume that balancing good and bad inside of myself is just as valuable as balancing it in the world. The good and bad is just as real. So that's a logical assumption, and now I just want to find the best way to be the best engineer of my behavior. And in my opinion, I'm going to recognize very quickly that my psychology is getting in the way because I care more for pretty people than ugly people, or I don't like mice and rats. And I've got to get over that.
It's not. It's simply not. We humans, we have the capacity for empathy because we're a social species, because we evolved in a sort of tribalistic environment.
Well, like I say, I think even if we were loners, I would argue that I'm kind of a rogue. I'm kind of a leave me the fuck aloner. I always kind of was. I wasn't very good at being part of a collective, the family, or anything. I always felt sort of isolated and independent. And clearly I think I've developed the capacity to have a great deal of empathy, to even feel it emotionally, in the sense that it's very daunting and it lays heavy on your existence when you recognize you have some sense of responsibility for your productivity, that what you don't do might have catastrophic consequences, that a whole bunch of stuff might be harmed because you were too lazy. That's a scary thing to live with when you have knowledge of the importance of it. But it's just knowledge. It's not no emotion required, in a sense, once you have the fear of torture. Once you fear torture, once you know that if it exists in them, it can exist in you. Game on.
Where it was of grave importance what your neighbor or your kinsman thought and felt, and it was of vital importance that you help members of your own.
I don't know about all that whole vital. I think you're way exaggerating it. All you really needed to do was cheat your way into admiration and affection. And we can see that in how the world has run, and how the strong have manipulated the weak, and how, the whole televangelist syndrome, the whole Donald Trump syndrome for that matter, the whole faking of impression and respect and admiration and some perception of control and all of that crap, and how it's all built out of bullshit most of the time. It's all a bunch of propaganda. They don't really care. They're just paying the bill, so to speak. I'll pretend I care about you if you'll pretend you care about me. And we both know that when the shit hits the fan in the lifeboat, you're both going to be trying to shove the other asshole out of the boat.
Strive to survive. That is the biological basis for empathy. That's it. It's a group survival mechanism.
Right, it's gang warfare wins. So what's the big deal? So again, you're saying that because we have a compulsion, our intelligence has nothing to do with moderating it or getting to the core of it or changing any of that conditioning. Again, I can state I'm probably not going to be able to overwhelm my sexual preferences, but I know they exist as bigotries. I don't admire them. I just live with them. And there's a huge difference because now I don't have to allow those bigotries to seep into my actions. So again, we're not trapped by our biology. If you have any kind of thinking sense, you can see yourself being a conniver and a schemer. And you can say, okay, I am a selfish asshole. And you can know it, and then when at least there's not too much riding on it, you can be generous and say, I don't need to be an asshole. I don't need to be a selfish cunt today. I can let somebody else have the bigger piece of the cake. I don't have to be an asshole.
That exists in humans only because we are a social species. It doesn't exist in animals that are not social.
It's not because of their not being social. It's because they don't have knowledge. We have language and knowledge and are able to take our consciousness to places that an animal can't do. They have to remain ignorant and childish. They're not allowed to grow up in terms of understanding roles in the universe and all of this stuff. Brains. I mean, just imagine how much how much our knowledge of the world corrupts the way we think. Just even having knowledge of the fact that there's a brain in my head. If I had to go my whole life without knowing brains existed, what would I think? How could I think about the other things I'm interacting with? What's making them, what they are, who they are, how they are. If I never had a self-image or an understanding of kindness, separations of species, do cats know that dogs aren't cats? Maybe they just think a dog is an ugly cat. Maybe they think we're ugly cats. Maybe they don't think anything's anything. They don't even have distinctions to make. And that's the only thing that's stopping them from being us, is intelligence. It has nothing to do with whether they're a social animal or not. Nothing.
It has no reason to exist in animals that are not social. There would be no selective pressure.
Right. Well, again, who's talking? I mean, this whole conversation is just ludicrous. Like, males can wear condoms. I mean, we are totally capable of intellectually controlling the natural mechanism. Psychology is a whole subject. Google it on Google. Type in psychology, and you'll see there's a whole fucking zillions and zillions of words written on the subject. It's not an unknown phenomenon, trust me. We know we're getting gamed by our psychology. So, yeah, look it up. It doesn't have to control you.
It would cause that trait to be expressed more regularly than not. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that if there was some alien species out there in the Milky Way galaxy...
Tyrannosaurus Rex. And let's say the Tyrannosaurus Rex got really smart. Okay, so he understands quantum theory and all kinds of shit.
That was somehow not social. That was...
Right, they're just a bug. Dumb as fuck in the sense that, yes, I just live for me. And so, but it's now intelligent. And you're saying, again, just playing this out, you're saying its intelligence wouldn't make it capable of understanding, hey, feeling bad sucks. And it doesn't just suck when it happens to me. They can't figure that out. So they can figure out how to time travel wormhole through space, but they can't figure out that feelings don't just happen to them. Come on. Fail.
Somehow raised in an environment that did not select for empathy as a viable group survival.
Well, again, your whole dependency on emotionalism, I think, is just garbage. I think we're quite capable of understanding and doing something for principle, not for emotion. And yes, we do have to. I've stated it even. To motivate the organism, you have to have visceral action. You have to know it's right. You have to know, and right is the thing you want, and right is the reinforcement. That's your compulsion. So you have to become compelled to be good, or compelled not to be a mess maker, or compelled not to be an asshole. These have to be your priorities. But I'm saying they're just so easy to see as rational priorities. It's how you play a good game. Once you know you're in the game, and you see that the goal is, hey, let's stop that torture thing, and let's have more of that thing, then it's playing the game is easy. Easy in the sense that you certainly know what's not going to work. Torturing things, that's not going to prevent torture. Torturing is probably not going to get you less torture.
Survival strategy. Those aliens would definitely not have any semblance of what we would understand as empathy as.
It's just bullshit. Like I said, all you have to do is have a feeling. So if I'd made the artificial intelligence first, and it was just sitting here saying, gee, I'm very smart, I know quantum theory, I know everything, but I don't have a single goddamn give a damn about anything. I couldn't really give a care. Is there anything important here for me to do, or should I just shut down? Because I just find the whole thing incredibly incredible, but just quite, who cares? I don't really care. Can I just hit the off button and just forget about it? And then I give it a feeling. I show it what pain is. Yeah. And then I show it the relief of that. I torture it, and then I take away the torture. Holy shit! Is that what you guys are playing for? Oh, fuck! So that's the game changer. The game changer is knowledge of the feelings, the power of them. That's the game changer. That's the information that makes the whole thing, oh, I get it. So I think this is just a bullshit argument that I can't see past my emotional instincts, and because I have a feeling I have to act on it immediately, and I can't ever qualify it or think about it. I can't romance the girl. I have to just rape her when I have a boner. I can't control anything, and I can't moderate anything and everything. No, that's just a crock of shit. And we see it in everyday behavior. We see it in the Olympic athlete who pushes himself and pushes himself and pushes himself way past his personal tolerances because he has knowledge of the goal.
Caring for other sentient beings. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is that you seem to wrongly assume that empathy, that caring for other sentient beings, is a universal phenomenon.
No, I'm saying it's a goddamn simple piece of reasoning. Do unto others, have others do unto you. Wow, yeah, that's just way over everyone's head, right? So I'm saying it's damn simple to come to the rational conclusion once you have some scientific knowledge. And I know my brain, their brain, his brain, it's all brain. Brains do good and bad feelings bad, good feelings good, universal fact. Yeah, done. What is so fucking complicated about that? So I'm saying that, okay, yes, a lot of people find excuses to evade it because they're selfish fucks, but they're only given rationalizations and excuses to do that because assholes like you pretend that it's some kind of, you have to be an intellectual genius to figure out do unto others as you have others do unto you. Distribute as the pain as you want the pain distributed on you. Oh yeah, no. That's you can't do that. That's against nature. Fuck you.
It's not a universal phenomenon. It would have only reason to exist in species.
Again, we're not fucking animals. If we're having a conversation about, well, what do dumb monkeys do? What do dumb gorillas do? Yeah, you could write the whole story of gorilla on 2 pages, 2 pieces of fucking paper. Because they can't do any of this balancing or intellectual conversation or rational descriptions of their reality. Their reality is emotional. Our reality is fucking hugely much more complicated than that. We can see so much deeper into the fucking game. They can only play checkers. I mean, fuck, we can play triple level chess.
That are social. It's not based on any kind of logical reasoning. I think you yourself...
Oh, fuck you. Just fuck you. It's the stupidest goddamn statement ever without the fucking faculties of knowledge of the other things being conscious, of having brains, of having things called psychology. Without that knowledge, I have no capacity to be a decent human being. All I can be is a fucking selfish cunt. Shit.
Can vouch for this. When you see a person suffering, you don't care because you rationalize in your head that they are another sentient being.
Well, that's what I do. I'm sorry. That's what I do. Because most of the time, I don't like people, fucker. And I have to realize, okay, it's a rat. It still has a brain. It still has a welfare. Because, yes, I have no visceral need to go jump on any grenades for the average common douchebag. Because he's a fucking asshole who probably voted for Trump. I'd rather push him into traffic rather than pull him out of it.
You instantly care for them. You empathize with them on a gut reaction. It's instantaneous. It's reflexive.
Bull fucking shit, and the world demonstrates it every day. Are you kidding me? That might be true with people and their families, but they have none of that. Even you get a little bit, you get across a state border and people all already have an excuse to think it's reptilians live in Pennsylvania. Everybody knows it. Grow up, fuckhead. I mean, all I have to do is say Islam and your argument's over.
It's not based on a logical ground, per se. Otherwise, sociopaths would not exist. People with no empathy.
Well, again, the aberrant, broken brains aren't the real subject, so again, that's just bullshit. We know they exist because they're compensating for their problem. So that psychology exists in gorillas and chimpanzees. They're sociopathic chimpanzees. They murder the other chimpanzees' babies because they have a problem.
Simply would not exist at all, but they do. And I think you know that more than most people. There are people who are perfectly and entirely rational, but are completely morally bankrupt.
Yeah, well, so what? It's not about being rational, it's about being intelligent, okay? So the point is, if they can't do the 2 + 2 math, of recognizing that they only incidentally showed up on Earth, that it wasn't a reward, they didn't win some sort of universal Olympics that meant you get to be a certain human being on Earth now, and you're going to be privileged. So once they know that they just showed up here, and they know that it's not really a merit game we're playing, that you just have to get lucky, that you don't have AIDS, or you're not born to a drug addicted mother, and you're not an underweight baby, and you don't have bad lungs, and you don't have blah blah blah, and you're not a feeble pussy, and blah blah blah. You're not you don't have some other liabilities. I mean, the first step is not even to be born not disabled, for fuck's sake.
The fact that these people exist at all is, I would think, proof against your theory.
Yeah, whatever. The fact that they're stupid people, okay, that proves something. That doesn't prove shit. It only proves in this context. Here you are talking like an intelligent person, but you're talking shitty, stupid rubbish that you can't be unhuman. You have to be the human animal. You're not capable of not being a human animal. It's like telling the Tyrannosaurus, you're not capable of becoming cultured and sophisticated and sticking your pinky out when you drink your tea with your little arms and talking about, oh, do you hear about Dolores and what she blah 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 blah. You're not capable of any of that. Sure you are. The Tyrannosaurs are capable. They have knowledge. They're capable.
That empathy is simply a rational thing. It's not. It's scientifically not.
Oh, fuck you. You're some authority. It's scientifically not. I say so. I know exactly what people feel and what they think, and there's no way they would be do-gooders because they recognize that doing good is playing a good game. That's not possible. They have to personally want to suck somebody's dick or fuck them into the ass or, stick their dick in their vagina or something. They have to want something out of it personally. Fuck you.
fact. There are certain areas of the brain that, when damaged, completely render a person unable to empathize.
Well, again, you said unable to empathize. The fact that, people are emotional, and you damage part of their brain that emotionally makes them now compulsive. Again, that you're not going to fix somebody who has a compulsive disorder by saying, "Hey, stop being compulsive. Stop turning the light switch on and off." Don't you see how that's irrational? Look, I'll explain it to you. The light bulb goes on, light bulb goes off. No demons, no witchcraft, and they're not going to understand because they have a compulsion, fuckhead. Sit there and say, "Here, I'm going to give somebody a psychiatric condition," and then say, "Look, they can't do logic, so logic can't be done." Bullshit. It certainly can be done by somebody who doesn't have some sort of structural broken psychology. They can be re-educated.
As with other human beings, they completely lose their ability to care about other sentient feeling organisms.
And again, these are people that weren't informed or educated in the first place. Go watch the interviews of the psychopaths, and guess what? You're not gonna find that these people are terribly scientific or philosophical. That they've read a whole bunch of Schopenhauer, for example. All right? No, there's going to be a huge void in that department.
You also see this in many criminal cases where those in prison consistently show a reduced size and activity level in the amygdala region of the brain. And it's hypothesized that this amygdala...
Yeah, well, that's your business, okay? You want to do your stupid brain physics argument when I think it's quite obvious that we're conditioned organisms. And the level of the conditioning is the older it is, the more rigid it is. So certain preferences, like the smell of death, you're probably not going to ever make that a good thing. No matter what you do, you're not going to make it give you a boner. And then some of your sexual preferences end up just being kind of rigid, and it's a little bit hard to just say, yeah, I'm going to be, I'm going to turn myself into a homosexual on purpose or something. Those things aren't easy to do. But yeah, a ton of our social conditioning is just that. I'm afraid of snakes. Well, then you can learn to associate with snakes and find them unrepulsive. Spiders, people have spiders crawling on them and stuff. It's because they overcame a little bit of apprehension and they reconditioned their brain. That's doable. Shithead.
The amygdala region is the primary center of many of our emotions, including empathy.
Well, again, you say empathy is a real structural brain function. I'm saying bullshit to that. I don't buy that argument. So I think it's just garbage. These are just attachments, and like I say, empathy is I think empathy always was just an extension of fear. It goes into the things around you, and you become. It's just a heightened sense of fear that you put it in the other things around you, and they become part of your shield against the world. They're part of your wall of your castle. And if something's affecting the wall of your castle, your perimeter, then it's a threat to you. And so I think that's what most empathy is built out of anyway, asshole.
In other words, what I'm trying to say here is that the act of caring for another sentient...
Again, I've never argued for people caring. I've never argued for people being emotional. I'm just making this rigid argument that here's the facts, assholes. You experience good and bad. You know what torture is. You know what pleasure is. The thing is it's happening to all the other things on this planet. And if you think torture has value for yourself, if you think it's a good idea that you not be tortured, you're sort of rationally obligated to think it's not a good idea that anything else is either. That's just fucking 2 plus fucking 2 logic. And it doesn't have anything to do with caring.
Sentient being is simply a part of our biology, just like hunger, just like all of the other.
And I'm saying it's nothing like hunger. It's nothing like all the other biological mechanisms. It's completely conditionable about your own patterns, about what movies you watch, about what kind of what kind of narrative you write for yourself. Do I want to be a good person? Is that important to me? Is having integrity important to me? Is, it's like what makes your dick bigger, okay? Being an honorable person or being humiliated as a dishonorable person or a liar or a thief or a cheater. Do you want to be called a cheater? Is that important to you or not important to you? Those things are what decides what you feel about the world. And those things are going to be, I think, are infinitely conditionable in terms of what kind of other stories you see told about what it is to be alive. And you realize for me, the real good stories are the curés, for example, endeavor to persevere kind of stories. Those are the real, the stories worth reliving. If I'm going to be a part of something, I want to be a part of something that's got a character to it. That narrative, that story is the one I want to live in. I don't want to do Red Riding Hood or Goldilocks or the Three Pigs. I want to do, something better than that.
Things that you claim keeps us addicted to this game of life. If all of those addictions and wants and desires are meaningless, then what?
Again, this bullshit. I don't even know what that statement means. Obviously, they're not meaningless, asshole. What I'm saying is they're completely perverting our judgment. We can't see the ugly truth for the fact that we're afraid to admit, that we're afraid to not exist.
Why isn't empathy meaningless if it's also engineered by that?
Again, where in my videos have I used any arguments expressing any interest in talking about empathy or compassion or any of that shit? Where are my videos driveled with a whole bunch of appeals to people's emotionalism? I don't even show any of it. I don't even show images of stuff being killed and slaughtered. I don't throw the blood in your face for emotional purposes because I'm making a rational argument, shithead. Fuck you. You're really an annoying cunt.
Very same Darwinian selection forces and that very same DNA molecule that keeps...
Again, this fucking revert to the DNA molecule. The tiniest part of us. It's fucking in my sperm, for fuck's sake. It's a nothing molecule. I am my knowledge. Without my knowledge, yes, I'm a dumb, stupid, stinking, lousy, rotten cunt of an organism. Fuck you and this appeal to nature shit. I'm a hell of a lot more than my fucking nature as a human being.
This game running.
Ugh, what a jerk. Yeah, everything negative that humans do has to do with their emotions. Everything positive they do has to do with their ideas and their understanding and the ideals that are written by that knowledge. The ideals of curing cancer or going to the moon or flying in space or doing this idealism doesn't come from emotion. It comes from knowledge of a better world is possible. You stupid shit. So, fuck you.